You were here. We're up to your Testament base at the bottom. Your Testament base at the bottom. So yesterday we began the Mishnah about what you can write with and what you can write on. Right? We spoke different things. The purpose being that it has to be indelible. It has to be something that is permanent, right? And it also has to be on something that is not alive, according to one person. According to Rabbi, it can't be alive. It can't be an eichel. According to Tanakama, it could be alive as long as you give over the whole thing. You can't have an action in between the ksiva and the nesina. So if you go ahead, for example, and cut it write it on an olive leaf, and the olive leaf is connected, then you would not be able to use it as a get because you had the ksitza, the act of cutting it off between the ksiva and the nesina. Conversely, if it was disattached and you just wrote it, you'd be able to give it over. We said you can even write it on the shar, on the horn of a shar, or you can even go right in the hand of an eved, provided you give over the shar, provided you give over the eved. Okay, so we have a continuation of that sugya, the interesting things. Says the Gemara, who gavra, 4 lines from the bottom, on is Yutes on the base. Who gavra, there was this individual, his Zaruk Lagita Levisayu, Beni Dani. Dani are barrels, usually barrels of wine. So let's say there's a wine cellar, he threw a get to his wife, and Ishtakach Mezuzah, she went to pick it up, and she found a mezuzah. You know, he told her it was a get, found it was mezuzah. Some of Nachman, mezuzah the Beni Dani Shakluha. Right? She went ahead and she took a mezuzah Beidani, and therefore I just skipped the line. Mezuzah Beidani lo shchiach. It's not shchiach, and therefore what? It must have not been there all along, and we have to assume that he threw that, right? Because again, you don't keep a mezuzah the Beidani, so it must be that what he threw that, and she's not divorced. However, the hanimili the shtachach chodad, provided you find one mezuzah. Aval beis gimel, when you find 2 or 3 mezuzahs, midaha havoi, hanami havoi, right? And when that was there, they were there as well, meaning, and he didn't throw that. When you find more than, we know he threw one thing. So you're finding more than one mezuzah, we'll assume that he didn't throw a mezuzah, or else why would you have other mezuzahs there? The Gita ema I, so where's the get? Ema say achvorim shaklua. We can go ahead and say that the rats took it, and therefore she would be a suffix mugareshes, according to Rashba. What? You have to say that it's in her chutzah, right? You have to say it's in her chutzah wherever the sina was, right? That would be a good point, Shragi. In addition, she'd be suffix mugareshes. In this case, you have to assume that it was a get. Who gathered the oil ulebe kanishta, and he went to the base knesses. Shakal Sefer Torah. He took a Sefer Torah, and Yob Leil B'Sayu, and he gave it to his wife. V'amallah Hagitech. This is your get. Amr Rav Yosef. No, I lechesh. So what can we possibly be suspicious about over here that we have to be concerned that she's divorced? Imishum May Milin. Right? If you're going to tell me else May Milin. Now we saw yesterday, fellas, that May Milin is gold nuts that are soaked in water, and you write it on May Milin. We said that's not good. May Milin. So maybe that what on the gevil of the Sefer Torah he wrote a get. Good. Maybe on the gevil of the Sefer Torah he wrote a get, and therefore we can't be concerned about that because why did where would it be? Correct, and you don't see it. So meaning the Sefer Torah was worked over with afitzim with gall nuts. That was worked over with gall nuts. By the way, Lenny, that the blog, that gall nut thing was pretty. I was impressed. I thought it was something from Mars. You know, you see that it's amazing that it's in the blog. You wrote this whole thing about gall nuts. Anyway, so you have the gall nuts. You're writing with gall nut juice on gall nuts. You're not going to see it, and we're not chayish for that. And therefore, don't be suspicious that this Torah was just being used for its parchment, right? Because that's not considered a kasiva, guys. That's why we'll be in the sugya. That's not a kasiva of a get. It's not a good place. So ein may milin agad may milin amid aleph ein mishum krisus de ispa. What about the parshas kiseitze where it says v'chasav la sefer krisus? But that's also not good. In other words, forget that he wrote a get. The Sefer Torah itself, the parsha of Gitin, should be the get. There's nothing to be chayish for there either. Why? Because it says v'chasav la, and as we know by now, we should know by now, v'chasav la means lishma. And the assumption is what? Beleka, that the Sefer Torah was not written lishma, the Pasha of Krisus wasn't written lishma to divorce this woman. The Chitema, might you say, Lechesh Dilma Agdim V'Yavla Zuzah L'Safra Meikara. When the Sefer was writing the Sefer Torah, he paid her. He paid the Sefer. and that should write this Sefer Krisis Lishma for his wife. Habeinin, we need, take out the word, we need Shma Yushma, Shem Ira Shem Ira. We need a typhus of get. We need, in other words, just because it says V'chasala Sefer Krisis, that's not enough. And even if it's written Lishma, the same this woman, it's still not enough. You need much more specific information for it to be a get. So says Rabbi Yosef, what's it's not even a shaila. And any kid in the world could go ahead and answer the shaila that if a man gives a Sefer Torah to a woman as a get, that it's not a get. What should we be suspicious about? Okay, Rabbi Yosef says, Rabbi Yosef might come ashman. So why is the beginning of this whole Gemara? What's the kiddush over here? That in other words, that if in fact there was a get written on the parchment of Sefer Torah, that's not a good ksiva because ein mei milin golnut Jews on mei milin on a parchment that was worked with golnuts. That's the chiddush of Rabbi Yosef. Amra Fista. Get shekosvu shaloi lishma. As we know, v'chasa blood, get has to be written lishma, and this get was written shaloi lishma. The hever of kulmis lishma, and now they took a pen, a kulmis, and they took ink, and they wrote over the letters of the existing get. You have to say it was written with his name, her name, same city, and now they wrote it over lishma. So you have ksav al top of ksav, you have ksiva al top of ksiva. Bonul machloikas Rabbi Yehuda Rabbanan. This would go ahead and enter the machloikas between Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanan. Now, who's Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan? The Tanya. I will show you. Tzarech lichtav es Hashem. You're writing a Sefer Torah, and you have to write the Shem Hashem. Now, when you write the Sefer Torah, the Shem has to be written, the Shem Sefer Torah, and the OCS has to be written, the Shem HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Niskaven lichtav Yehuda. In other words, you were writing the Shem, but you weren't mechaven for the Shem, you were mechaven for the words Yehuda. V'tov lehitah dalid. And what happens? And then you went ahead and you wrote, instead of Yehuda, you wrote Yud Kei Vav Kei, which was what you should have written in the first place. But since you were going to say Yehuda, this is a classic case of Shaloi Lishma. So now, with sustelling Shaloi Lishma of a get to the Shaloi Lishma of a Sefer Torah, what can you do? Marvel of Kulmis, go ahead, pass the Kulmis right over it again with ink, Umikad Shay, Rabbi Yehuda. That's the words of Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda says, in fact, you can go ahead and do that. So Pashtus also, you would say by a get, if you go ahead, that was written Shaloi Lishma, and you mave the kulmis, and you rewrite the get, you're not rewriting it because you're really going over the existing letters, it would work according to Rabbi Yehuda. The Chachamim Maimim, Ein Hashem min hamufcha. This shame is not min hamufcha, and Pashtus, it would not be good. So therefore, this same machlokes we have by the Sefer Torah, let's say is by get. The Chachamim who do not allow by a Sefer Torah would not allow by a get. The Rabbi Yehuda who does allow by a Sefer Torah would allow by get. With the feeling being that Sefer Torah both needs to be Lishma and get needs to be Lishma, and you have a perfect parallel, perfect sushtel between Sefer Torah and get. Maybe it's not a good sushtel. What's the psul over there? This is my God, and I will glorify Him. And therefore, we look at Rashi, guys. His snolafon of the mitzvahs. We've had this many, many times throughout Shas. There's the inyan of hider mitzvah, right? Sefer Torah na, zuzah na, tefillin na, sukkah na. Right? We beautify mitzvahs. We beautify mitzvahs, yeah. So therefore, that's why the Chachamim say it's puzzle. Veleka aval hacha over here by get. Maybe the Chachamim would agree with Rabbi Yehuda that what. That lawyer, but here they would say it would not be a problem, and therefore even the Chachamim would admit that by get it would be a good get. Now, so we have the case, we have machlokes. A guy, you wrote a get shaloi lishma. Can you rewrite it with go over the words again lishma? Pashtus now at the end of the Gemara, you could do it. I find it a very fascinating thing. This sugya zekeli maveh is a sugya. It's a sugya that appeals to a lot of people. When you see it, it has this like appeal that people go ahead and what? We all are. Everyone wants a nice menorah. Everybody wants you have. I mean, you got tefillin. I'll tell you, many years ago, when my tefillin were checked, and it bothered me very much. My grandfather bought my tefillin. It had some unique, nostalgic, but it was nice. It was nice. The shir at that time, 25 years ago, I think almost, they bought me a new pair of tefillin, I bring it to the slave. It's beautiful. The beautiful thing. My son has tefillin shekel. He's 45 years old now. He just had a check. The slave opened it up and said, they're beautiful. I spent a lot of money at the time. There's an Indian of no, it's not. Here's the problem. What happens was I wasn't Yaitz all those years because my parshas weren't so nice. Of course I was. It wasn't Hidr Mitzvah, but I was Yaitza. What do you see from this Gemara? You see, guys, it's shaykh to have a Zekel Veu that'll passel, correct? It's possible to have it, right? It'll be passel. It'll be passel, which is not the usual norm. We usually learn what Esther doesn't passel. It doesn't passel the Esther. We creates Hadar, but you should have a Hidr. But again, it doesn't passel. It doesn't passel. You don't have a nice Esther, but it doesn't passel. Over here, it's passel. So the kasha, it was bothering me, and I heard from Philip once he brought in some Seifa. Some Seifa says a Chiddush Nifla. He says the following. He says Zek Keli Mevi is not a pasul except one place, by the shame. By the shame. Zek Keli Van Veu, you are my God. In the Hashem's name, it's a chasar in the Keli. It's unique didn't what to all over. It's not a pasul. You sit in a sukkah that's not so nice. You have a menorah that's not so nice. You have a kiddushka, whatever thing. Shem Hashem, Zek Keli Van Veu. It's like it's this. Yeah, that's some say from the pshat, and that would be beautiful pshat to go ahead and answer up that. Yeah.
Does he actually write over it or just passes the pen over? Because you can't write on top of writing.
Oh, so that's his Taisvis. Okay, I wasn't going to do this Taisvis. No.
Thank you, Rabbi. Can you fly again? Go back on the plane. Go back on the plane.
Okay. So obviously asking the question, let's do the Taisvis. Baruch Hashem. You Testament Aleph, guys. You Testament Aleph. I'm sorry what everyone's thinking about you right now. You Testament Aleph. Okay. Dayoel Gabe Dayoel Pata. On Shabbos, guys, if you write Dayoel ink on ink, you Pata. Why? This kind of ksiva. So Fred Rabbi. So how in the world can you tell me what? That this is a ksiva? It's not a ksiva. It's not a ksiva. Hema. The Hacham Ashma Dayoel Gabe Dayoel Loy Klum. Halin Shabbos. What? Who I didn't get? The Medami B'Samach Shabbos. Umashma the Lekam on the Polgala. Ulakaman Arminon. Kisvu Shaloi Lishma. The Herald of Kulmish Lishma. Banal Machlaikas Rabbi Yehuda Rabbanan. Rabbi Yehuda have Ksav. It is a good Ksav. Like Rabbi Yehuda, that's a question, right? Void. The Rav Achamasak Raman. The feel Rabbanan might the Gabi get Avikasha. Forget it. It's not only according to Rabbi Yehuda. It's even according what to the Chachamim. It's only Chesaron of what by Zekeli Van Veu by Sefer Torah. But even the Chachamim would be made the what by get. That it would be a ksiva. So fragmentation, Bamba Kasha, Rabbi is like Kasha. When you see that is Vayim Rabbeinu Yitzchak, they'll come on Vaday Shekasav Rishon, Hay Shaloi Lishma, Uksav Hasheni Yasol Lishma, Chashav Ksav Rabbi Yehuda. Uracha Afilu Rabbanon Chashav Ksav Gabe Get. Avahocha Shekasav Sheni Einim Mitakin Klum, Afilu Rabbi Yehuda Moed Chashav Ksav. Very geschmack at parents, guys, right? Guys, there's a ink on paper and there's halachic writing. There's ink on paper and there's halachic writing. If you write a get shaloi lishma, if you write a sefer Torah shaloi lishma, if you put it down, good, you have ink on paper, but it's garnish with garnish. It's nothing. And therefore, the second one that's done well, right? The second one that's done well creates the ksiva. And even the chum would be more than that. Mashen came by over the Gemara over here, where it was written already and it was written, and you're just writing again, then it's garnish for garnish.
The crazy thing is that you can write the first time, right on the paper. It's not good for get for you chayiv misa for Shabbos, and the second time it's good for get you're not chayiv misa. Ksav. It's the first ksav is not kosher. It's not a kosher get, right?
Right.
But you chayiv misa for writing a Shabbos,
right?
And the second one is a good get. You're not chayiv misa for that.
The second one would be a good get on if you're right. That's interesting. No, if it's a good get, then you'll be chayiv misa.
It's not because ksav.
No. If the only way it's going to be a good get if the first writing wasn't a good writing, so that means the second writing was a good writing. Listen. If you're going to say the second writing is a lishma, it's considered ksiva. Who I did in the Shabbos is going to say it's ksiva. You can't play both sides of the fence.
That's l'shma, it's ksiva, but
No. That's the goof what Taisus is saying. Taisus is saying that if it's halachic ksav, then it's ksav. If it's halachic ksav, then it's ksav. That Taisus is disagreeing with you. Anyway, Rabbi, thank you very much. That wasn't too hard. It was good. Hey, look, it's a little Fitzpatrick in the background there. Okay, anyway. So it says the Gemara Vaita. Okay, very good shema. Amar Rav Chisda. Yechilnu lemifsalinu lekule gita da alma. Says Rav Chisda, I'm able to passel all the Gitin. I'm able to passel all the Gitin in the world. Amalei Rav, my time. How are you going to accomplish that? It says that guys who want to get divorced, so you know who would pay for the get, guys? She would. She'd pay for the get because he doesn't want to pay for the get. She's going to pay for the slavery and everything. So it says because of law, and he has to write the get, and who's writing the get? Right, it says the Gemara, maybe the Rabbanan using the halach of Hefker, Bes, and Hefker. The Rabbanan could take their money, be mafker it, and give it to who they want. Good, she's paying for it, but they'll be mafker the money. They'll make it as if what? It's his money, and he's paying for the get. So you're not passing, you're not passing anything. If it's a din in the din in if she's paying for it, it's not for chasav. No, we have a workaround. We have this hefker bez and hefker is a great loophole. We use it all the time. The elamishum the v'nasan. It says what v'nasan, and you had the guys in the scene. It has to be at least a shava pruta. It has to be at least a shava pruta, and therefore, I guess this piece of paper is not worth a shava pruta. He's not giving her anything. So in other words, that's why you can pass all the Gitin in the world. And again, so get wasn't written on parchment, it's written on paper. I was learning all along it's written on parchment. No, it's written on paper. The Dilma Nasinas get he. Maybe Nasina Vanasanla is not going on value, maybe it's just going on the action. In other words, when you give something to somebody, it's not considered a giving unless it's a Shava Pruta. However, by get, that's not that part by get is that what? That you give it to her, right? Like the Shai was saying at the beginning of the share, it must be that what? That the wine cellar was her wine cellar, because you have to give it to her. It's got to be in her rishus. So that's why get that pada. But even though it's less than a shava pruta, heida a proof. The sholchem itam kasvul ali suri hana kasha. If you write a get on something that's asa bahana and give it to your wife, she would be divorced. You can't have enough in the paper. The answer is you're not. The answer is it doesn't have any value. If you wrote it on let's say a piece of paper that was served as an avodah zarah, so it's us to have enough in that paper. If you give the get, it would be a good get. Gemara is going to discuss this in a second. Why would it be a good get? Because you just have active nesina. It's not worth anything. You're right. Surya no, there's not. The value is to you is valueless because it's a surya no. So therefore, that's the proof that the ik is the nesina. So we've disproved Rav Chisda's statement that he's able to passel all the get. We can't figure out the reason you want to passel the get. It can't be out the ksiva because hefkin beskin hefka will make it his. It can't be out the nesina because the nesina even usually means that you have to give over something. Over here, it means the act of giving rather than the act of giving something of value. Okay, says the Gemara Bite. Gufa. Now we're going to go ahead. What you brought as a proof. Now we're going to go ahead and analyze. Sholchumitam, they sent from there. Kasvu al Isuri Hana, kosher. If you wrote a get on Isuri Hana, it would be kosher. It would be kosher. It would not be a problem. It would be kosher. Amar Ravashi, Afananami Tanina, we also learn. Allah Shal Zayis. Now, guys, why would it be work Isuri Hana? Because it doesn't have to be worth anything. It doesn't have to be worth anything, right? It doesn't have to be worth anything. So what are you going to tell me? I'm waiting for somebody to ask me the kasha. He's having a no, he's giving her a get. Right, without the paper, there's no get. Guys, you know the answer to this question. Mitzvah lav hennesnet. That's the mitzvah lav hennesnet, right? That's the terrace. In other words, you might think she's having a no. What do you mean? He's having a no. He's giving her a get on something that's also about no, but he's having a no. He's divorcing her. And the answer is there's a mitzvah to divorce your wife. If the reasons are right.
She's getting monetary. She's getting a monetary settlement that's not considered no.
What do you mean?
I'll forget, but she gets.
No. The act of the mitzvah is the divorce. So you're having that you're having enough in the get. You're not having enough. Forget about her. It's you. So now, so what's the tushtel, guys? The leaf of an olive leaf, and Isuri Hano are the same. They're both worthless. And nonetheless, you can see that our Mishnah said, if it's disattached and you write a get on an olive branch, an olive leaf, you can go ahead and use it. So what do you see? It doesn't need value. There's no, you have no right from our Mishnah. Dil Meshani Olashal Zayis, the Chazi lets Terufe. In other words, Isuri Hano, no matter how much you bind it together, it's also by no, you can't have any use from it. Ali Zayis Zichalein is not worth anything. But if you put enough you stuff a mattress with it, you'd have therefore it would have value. In other words, it does have value. You're saying it's valueless. It's not true because you put enough together, it has value. Tanya, Rabbi Aimer, Kisvu al Isuri Hana, Kasha. If you wrote on Isuri Hana, it's Kasha. Nafik Levi Darshamish made the Rebbe Kalsua. He went and darshan this Barabim in the name of Rebbe, and they didn't praise him. It wasn't accepted. Which made the Rabbim in the name of the Rabbim will kill Sua. Alma Hilchasakavase. See that Allah that what? That since he went out to again that they learned it. The fact that, in other words, why was Levi so makbid to go ahead and say it a second time? Because the Allah is like that, and we said it b'shem Rebbe for whatever reason it wasn't a skabel. But because again, the idea of Isuri Hana being used for a get is if you would ask us before seeing this Gemara, we'd all say you couldn't, right? Because when you guess and learning, 95% of the time, 99% of the time, you're wrong. It's an amazing thing, right? You figure but then you have to do. The amazing thing in learning, fellas, if Rebbe be calling you, it's a yes or no answer, right? You were always wrong. 50% of the time, you have to see that. I still remember him calling on me, and I was thinking one answer. I said, I'm not going to answer that answer because it's the wrong answer. So I switched the answer, and that was the wrong answer. So I took myself out of the right answer. So I always say pshat. He goes, 50-50 is statistics is teva, it's nature. You flip a coin enough times. It's above nature. Therefore, 99% of the time you're wrong. It's fascinating. Okay, anyway, says the Gemara Vaita. Tan Rabbanan. V'chasav v'leichaka. It gives a geschmack Gemara. One after the other, geschmack sugis. You have to write, and it should not be engraved. It should write and not be engraved. Let's, guys, for a second, let's leave the Gemara, and let's speak about minting a coin. You have a slab of metal. There's two ways to go ahead and create the image, either by taking the mint, pushing it down, and then it goes ahead and it takes all the metal around the image, pushes it down, and the image appears memela. Or it's somehow you could push from the other side and create that image. The difference would be if you push down, you're not writing anything. You're just making something that was there appear all along. If you push from the other side, you're creating something that will be a kasiva. So the Gemara is going to ask a question from the tzitz, where the tzitz, they said it was bolate. It was what's raised? It was what? Embossed is what? It's out, right? Infused or embossed. Okay, infused or embossed. But we're going to say teiches and reiches. Okay, so with this in mind, let's begin the sugya. Says the Gemara. What? Reiches is where you push from the back, and the other one, which we're going to see in a second, is where you push down. Teiches. Uriminu says the Gemara. The get has to be written; it can't be engraved. So let's say you would take a branch, guys. You take a knife and you'd whittle, scratch out. You'd whittle, like, what would the din be? That's ksiva. An evet that goes out with a ksav that's on top of a written tablet, upinkis repaired yatz lecheres. Avloy ksav shal gabe kipa, but not a ksav that's top of a woolen cap, or van duchtri, or an ornament. On an ornament, a woolen cap, that would have to have been embroidered. It'd have to be raised writing. So what do you see? That chakak, we see from the first part, you have a tablet, and usually the tablets were waxed, and you put something in, it would be a good ksiva. it'd be over here. Okay, so now the way to understand this Gemara is very geschmack, guys. You have two types of signet rings. You have a signet ring where there's a hole, and when you push it in, the image is created. Or you have a signet ring that is bolate, that it's out, and you're pushing in, and it makes a hole. It pushes in that area. So that's really exactly what happens over here. Amr Balas Kasha. Ha dachak toichais, ha dachak yirechais. Dachak toichais is what? Dachak toichais is where you're pushing down and you're making the area around, and it's appearing. So that would be, let's say, on the signet ring. On the signet ring, you have a thing that you want it. You're well, again, this max is not good because I'm not making it raised. I want it raised. I want it embossed, right? So let's say you have the mint, you push down, and now you have the picture of George Washington, and it's raised. Why? How did it get raised? Because you push down around it. That's not kasiva. That's considered tochos. Yerechos would be where you go ahead, as we see, and you push from the other side, and you push it up and out. And that's considered the chakak, that's kasiva. So in our case, guys, watch. If you take a piece of wood and you'd whittle the wood, so if you would scratch the letters of the get in the wood, that would be a good get. If you would whittle around and create the letters that they should be raised because you remove the wood from around it, that would not be ksiva, because the wood that's there is all long and you're whittling around. There's a difference. One, you created the ksav, the other one, you remove the area around that the letters should appear. Even though it's much more difficult, the latter, and even though it's harder work, that's not considered ksiva. That's not considered ksiva. What? Burning a piece of, if you burn something in, I would think that's okay. Yeah, I would think wood is okay. I would think wood would be kasiva. I think wood would be kasiva. Yeah, because that's similar to chakika. You're creating it. You're putting something there that wasn't there before. By whittling, the wood that was always there is always there. So by going ahead and burning it, I think soldering, you take a solder iron.
Wood you're burning away.
No, you're not burning it away, you're just scorching.
No, but it is burning the wood. So soldering, you're adding metal.
Okay, it works. And no, it works. It says Gemara, v'toichais loy. You mean toichais, guys? Toichais means that it would be bolate, it would be protruding, right, embossed. Or this is by the tzitz. On the tzitz, guys, it said Kodesh Lashem, right? It said Kodesh Lashem. Remember, we had the Machloikis in the Gemara in Shabbos, how it was written, right? 2 lines, 1 line. Rabbi Elazar in Rome. Had people argue with that? I don't know.
Not like the Sefer Torah.
What?
Not like the Sefer Torah.
What do you mean?
You played the Kodesh Hashem on the Sefer Torah.
I don't know. I didn't look at it. Anyway,
So it's Shabbos, the Shabbos.
they took it out.
Yeah,
Nice. It says Urmino Loyhoya Kosvu Shoikeya Ella Boilate. Right? They didn't write the tzitz Shoikeya. It wasn't the impressed. The words were not smashed down. Ella Boilate. They were what? They were protruding Kidin Rezov. And it says by the tzitz Michta Petuche Choisem. So when it says Michta, what do you see? It's considered a ksiva. Yet nonetheless, it's bolate, it's protruding, and it's kasiva. So you see, toichais is a good kasiva. Says the V'havadin Rezav toichasein. Says the Gemara Kidin Rezav like Kidin Rezav. It's like Din Rezav and it's not like Din Rezav. Kidin Rezav the boilet v'lay Kidin Rezav dilo hasam toichais hacha yerechais. Okay, the Gemara doesn't explain it over here. Rashi does. The Gemara explains on the Amud base. The tzitz was very, very thin piece of gold. So what did they do? From the other side, they went ahead and they pushed out the nun, they pushed out the zayin, they pushed out the resh. That you wrote the letter. So it's protruding, but you created it not by pushing down on it and having it raised. You actually pushed it up from the other side. Mashenka by a coin, you created it by pushing down on the same side, and that's the difference between the two. It's a very good svara. Amar Ravina Levashi. Roishma, those are the dyes that are used for minting. Michras charis or knufe michnaf. Michras charetz means, like we're discussing now, it pushes down and it's not kasiva. Or knufe michnif, you push down and somehow it gathers the metal together and brings it together, which would appear that it would be more of a ksav. Amalei michras charetz. It's considered michras charetz and therefore it's not considered kasiva. Esivei lahoya, it says by the tzitz lahoya kaisvay shakeya ela boilate. It wasn't shakeya. It wasn't in cost. Ela incused. Ela bolate, it was protruding, embossed. Kedin Rezav. If you're going to tell me on a base that michas skoritz, it was like you push down, it was created. But it sits, you need michta v'leka. Says the Gemara Teres kedin reizav like kedin reizav. Kedin reizav the boilate. It was like din reizav, the fact that it was what it was protruding. The loy kedin reizav dilu hasam migavoy. By din reizav it was on the same side. V'chacha, but over here by the tzitz me'avroi it was pushed from the other side. So when it says chlakak, chakika is no good. That's when you're going ahead and you are pushing it down. And very interesting halacha. There's an interesting halacha that you're not supposed to read gravestones because it's kosher l'shikha. Why we all do it? And the answer is it's when the gravestone is boilate, when the thing is boilate, it's pushing out. But when it's shakua, when it's in, then you're able to read it. It's a fascinating that we come across in Shas.
That's one of the reasons why they make the letters black. Even if you make enough meat and boil it enough, you're reading the black, you're not reading the letters that are on the stone.
And also that's one of the reasons you put the rock there, that it should go ahead and it should not be I might have made that up, I'm not sure. No one knows, so no one knows. No one knows. I think so. I think that's one of the reasons. I mean I could be wrong, but look at me in cup. That's one of the reasons that when you read you shouldn't forget something. I don't know, something like that. Okay, anyway, but it just came to mind because of the bolate and shokeya. Boy mine Rav Amir of Nachman. Kosed lo get al tashel zav. A guy writes a get on a plate of gold. But Amar law, and he tells the woman, Hiskabli giteich, Hiskabli ksuvasech. Be makabel your get and be makabel your ksuba. Right? Go ahead. Since Tosfos says, since it wasn't written l'shem gerishin, so efsher, then it's no good. Rashi says, Tosfos says, Afagav de kosvu al isuri hana kasha. So in other words, so isuri hana means it's not there, it's worthless, right? So what's the shaila over here? Hainu mishum de yovla mia get. In other words, what's the problem, guys? If you're giving her a ksuba, there's no letters being on something. If guys watch, here's the key to the sugi. Guys, look at me. Here's the key to the sugi. Watch. If you would give a woman a get al manas that the paper is yours, it's not a good get because the letters of the paper of the get are not on anything. You own the paper. They're parech ba'avir. So the same thing over here. If you're giving it on a piece of gold, but the gold is as mitaris piroyan for payment, maybe the get is not on something. That's what's bothering. So Tosfos said, Akasha, who cares? By Yisuri Hana, it's worthless, but it's not really because Yisuri Hana, you're giving it to her. It just there's no value over here. It's piroyan. It's like it's two separate components completely. So that's Gemara Shaila. But we're not. That's exactly we're saying. No, you can't. If you're saying this task is your ksuba, then the get is on nothing. It's not. That's what we're saying. The get is on nothing. That again. This is a get, and now it doesn't seem. It seems it doesn't seem like that. So Amalei. Well, niskabel gitim, niskabel ksuba. So we do. In other words, we do say like that. Your story is correct, right? But I had to give you a havamina of the shaila. What's the havamina? Like according to you, it's a double pashut, right? I'm saying, what's the shaila? The shaila is predicated upon the letters are not on something that's standing there. She's going to use the money she's going to sell it and use the money. So the answer is no. It's on something. But again, I had to explain to you the havamina of the Gemara. Eseve hiskabli giteich v'ashar l'ksuvasech. The bimekabel you get and the shar, the rest of the area around it should be for your ksuba and the skabel gita v'ashar l'ksuvasa. The reason is because you have extra area, meaning this is the gevil around that the letters are not written on. Mashma only here it works. Let's say it was just pure parchment, right? Lie, it would not be if the rest is for the ksuba, right? In other words, he's asking a kasha. You see that it's not pashut, that just because the place that the letters are resting upon is problematic. The reason why it's ksuba because there's areas that are free agents. Mashain came So how can you tell me you write on a piece of gold, and let's say all the piece of gold was taken up by what? By words. How can you tell me a miskabel you get? No, it says more like your diak is not a correct diak. Your diak that's saying the whole reason it works is because there's empty space is not a good diak. Who I didn't afagad the lekashar. Even if there wasn't any extra space and the letters were taken up on all of that, you'd still be divorced, and it was she was still like suba. The afagav the ikashar, even though there is extra space. I amala in, right? If he tells her it's tashlumin for the ksuba in, iloi loi, right? In other words, he has to designate it as what? As the ksuba. So if he wouldn't designate it, then she would have it without being Mitaris ksuba. So let's say hypothetically, you give her a really nice, you guys you go to a wedding, a guy spends a fortune on a ksuba, it's written over, it's beautiful, it's nice, right? So a guy writes up a beautiful get. And he says, you know what? This is your get, and this is your ksuba. And she goes, what a nice guy, right? Sheepo. Right? And so he gives you, put, then they rip it up, so you can't collect again. Okay, but you got my drift, right? So now, let's say such a Heifet Timsa would exist, and it would have big value. You can go to a Judaic place and sell it, So if you would tell her that what it's for the purpose of ksuba, and it would be, but you give her the same get and you didn't say it, it's going to cost you another ksuba. That's the chiddush over here. Not to say that if there was nothing written around it, it wouldn't be good. It still would be good. Why? Because as Abby's saying, it's too we can view it. We don't view it the same as not giving over the near and having it float in the air. We don't view it that way. The Hiddush is that if you say the sha'ar, the extra gevil that has some value, is a ksuba, paying for ksuba, it would be. But your failure to say it, she would keep it, and it wouldn't be. Okay. Why is that? My timer, avira the Megillah. The sha'ar is considered the margin of the Megillah. It's considered part of the document. Tanabanan. Harizeh gitech b'nir shali. Okay. Again, this whole Gemara was predicated on this Gemara. This is your get, and the paper is mine. Eina megureshes. She's not divorced. Why? Look at Rashi. Eina megureshes. Two lines down it gets thin. The kiven danir shaloi leinasan laklum. The nimsu oisius parchas ba'avir. Since you kept the paper, why did you give her? Letters. And where are the letters? They're floating in the air. They have nothing to rest upon. So therefore, she's not divorced. Al menashe tachziri li esaniyar. However, I'm giving you this get on the condition that you return me the paper. Harizum gereshes kos matana al manas ahasir shmei matana. Is a matana, so therefore it was resting on it. Boira papa. Being shita l'shita, ubein teva l'teva. My says between the letters are yours. The paper underneath the letters are yours. But the spaces, the lines between the letter is mine. Says the Gemara, what's the din? Teiku. Read the Gemara, the typically the Sefer Echad Amrachmana Leishnayim Shleisha Sfarim. Why don't we say it says V'kasav la Sefer Krisis? It should be one Sefer and not 2 or 3 Sfarim, right? And since he kept the paper lines to himself, that it's this get is you're gonna have to cut it up. He's keeping the spaces in between. So you're going to have to cut up and give him those spaces. So what are you going to have? 1 line, 2 lines. It's going to be like cut and paste, right? Like the ransom notes, right? The ransom note. You're going to have that. You're going to have that. So in other words, why is he mesupik teku? L'chora, it should be pashit that it's not a good get because it's going to be a bunch of svarim and not one sefer because it's all going to be cut up. Says the Gemara. No, in that case, that would not be a reason to passel. Why? Why? Because like tzricha dima'ura, you have letters that connect. I have somewhere. Let me find this. This is a get. Look at the letters. The way you see the long letters. The letters connect line by line, so therefore it wouldn't be considered svarim. It wouldn't be different svarim. Therefore, it's a teku. You see the letters that they connect, the lines go down. So therefore, it would be. Yeah, guy from Mel from Staten Island. Anyway, that's what it says. I was just thinking about the Torah we spoke out at the Siyum. My Rosh Yeshiva's Torah that he brought a raya from the Davarik, he brought in the Sivis, that in the Sefer Torah, the reason why get has 12 lines is because of Haigain says that there's how many lines between Svarim? 4 lines or 3 lines? I think it was, hang on a second. 4. It's 4 lines. It's 4 lines in between, and you don't count the ones between Bamidbar and Mishnah Torah. And he says that he brought in the Sivis that Yisrael Yesh Shishim Ribi Isis the Torah. That's what Yisrael stands for. There's 600,000 letters in the Torah. There's no way it's 600,000 letters, but all the areas, they're all filled in. All the areas are filled in, and even those areas have to be filled in, or else it would be different svarim. It won't be safe for creases. That's the point he's bringing over here, or else it will be broken up. And therefore, we said the Torah is by Rick. It's not missing, right? I feel a Reika Shebehen. We said even the people are empty, and we spoke out beautifully that the people who has a chelik of those letters that are written in the Torah, and people have a chelik of letters that are not written in the Torah. But it would be what? It would be one safer, and that would be over here. That you break it up into different svarim, so it'd be very geschmack with this Gemara. Okay, one more Gemara. Boy Rami Bar Chama. The get kasav al yadai. He's got a get. He's got an eved. We're muchzik that this eved belongs to him, and there's a get written on the hands of the eved. Right? Who yotzim mitachas yada, and who lo and behold the eved's by her. Mahu. Mi amrinan aknuyi ma'aknala, that he was maknit to her and she's divorced. That the eved is found in a rishus. He walked over by himself, but there was no nesina. So Amarava, the typically the kasav shiachal is dayafu. What's your shaila? Maybe the get was written one way and it was counterfeited. It was erased and something else was written. So I will say it's a good get, even if it was given over. Maybe the fact that it was out of his rishus for a little while, maybe somehow, but there was a tanai written and the tanai was erased. Ularava kasha masnisan and Rav now. Now you have to see Rami Bar Chama, guys. The shaila, there was no Edi Masira, guys. There's no Edi Masira. When Rami Bar Chama, there was no Edi Masira. If you had Edi Masira, then they would have read it and they could tell you whether it's Mizuya for that. Right. So Ula Rava Kasha Masnisan Al Yad Shaleved. So like Rava, whose shaila is that maybe why there was a counterfeit. You have a shver from our Mishnah. How come our Mishnah works? Mishnah Masnisan the Revelation Kasha Be'edi Masira. It could be our Mishnah could be speaking by Edi Masira. Rebbe Lazahi and Rebbe Laza. So you know you're not worried about a counterfeit. Of course, before the Eved was in the rishus of the woman, the Edi Masira read it over. But El Roim Bachamu said it's not speaking about Edi Masira, right? Because clearly it's not, because if it's speaking about Edi Masira, you wouldn't have a kasha in the first place. How you got over there? Kasha. That what? Maybe it's Mizuyah. Says more than Rami Chamanami like kasha. It's kaka. It's written as a tattoo, and therefore you're not worried about a forgery. So hashted us is the hockey. It's the two. Masnisanami loy tikshul Ravi will not be shver. Right? You can see because of his kaka. My havila. What's the bottom line? Tashma dam roish lakish. Had goydrosh elem chazaka. Goydrosh anything that moves. Let's say you have a chazaka that this sheep is yours, and you find it in the guy's rishus. We'll say anything that's movable, you don't have a chazaka. The fact that it's in your rishus is not machzik that it's yours. But who within the eved, the fact that it's found in the rishus of the isha is not machzik that he gave it over. Who just could have went over there in the first place. Thanks everyone for listening.
Sure.